the priority in dealing is determined, and he should pressure him at first so he doesn't even think about manipulation. As the protagonist moves his gadget aside, the guy takes a sigh of relief and attempts to maintain his composure, stating that he didn't expect his style to be heavy on anyone. Lennox becomes bewildered to see that guy laughing despite nearly choking and finds it suspicious. He wonders if that guy really comes to deliver a mission and considers it evidence that the boundaries between enemies and allies are bleak. Lennox gazes at the guy, thinking he looks more like a beast than a human from the outside. The guy notices the cutter in Lennox's hand, pondering if that older man adjusted it, and remarks that he thought the man died long ago, but is still alive and doing it. He then hands his business card to Lennox and introduces himself as Killian, revealing that he works as part of the support company that made this cutter. Killian informs Lennox that their headquarters wants to hire him directly, prompting Lennox to ponder if Dyke is looking for him. The guy takes him to the Dyke's headquarters to inform him further about the mission, and then asks if the protagonist knows the nature of their company's work, and Lennox responds that he slightly knows. According to the information he heard from Jenny, Dyke initially started as a factory manufacturing industrial tools. Over time, the company expanded and ventured into the arms trade due to its substantial capital, and because of this, it is said to be at war with the current arms manufacturer Archils. Meanwhile, as they step out of the elevator, the guy informs him that if all goes well, he will be given a temporary position as part of the support team. However, Lennox responds that he hasn't heard a word about what he is supposed to do in this mission, and Killian says that he brought him here for that. The guy takes him into an office, informing Manhwa that he has got the mage here, but the girl there asserts that she has instructed him to call her before the arrival. Manhwa greets Lennox, expressing her gratitude for coming here, and requests him to have a seat. She remarks that it's a pleasure to meet him and introduces herself as Manhwa Bellucci, the planning team leader at Dyke. Lennox introduces himself as Van and asks if she is the planning team leader, suspiciously inquiring about her position in this company. The lady anxiously asks why he is inquiring about this, and Lennox responds that he wants to know who the mastermind is and what he is capable of because he hasn't heard anything from this werewolf. Manhwa asks if he knows Killian is a werewolf, wondering if Killian tells him. Lennox clarifies that it's just his instinct, urging that he could sense it after killing one. Manhwa assures Lennox that their company strictly prohibits internal power struggles, emphasizing their commitment to a conflict-free environment. Maintaining a reserved stance, Lennox intends to decide on his involvement based on Manhwa's information. Apologizing on Killian's behalf for any perceived rudeness, Manhwa acknowledges Lennox's query and emphasizes that her position grants her direct authority over the company's strategic direction. Additionally, she discloses that the project was her initiative, implying a significant personal investment and commitment. According to Manhwa, following their venture into the weapons industry, their company has been seeking opportunities to broaden its customer base, aiming to reach citizens in their 40s and 50s and those in the outer districts. Lennox expresses his lack of confidence in marketing, to which Manhwa clarifies that marketing isn't what they require from him. She explains their intention to expand their business into the 40s district, but outlines a need to address a few obstacles before product sales commence. She hopes Lennox could assist with overcoming these hurdles. Although Lennox suspects they aim to eliminate the weapons market monopolists in the area, he harbors reservations and tells Manhwa that he doesn't understand what she means by her request. He asserts that a company like Dyke should have more than enough of a workforce. He wonders why she would put in a request like this. She reveals that there are two reasons. The first is that Lennox is a freelancer who has gained popularity in the field faster than anyone else, mainly due to his proficiency as a mage. The second reason is that hiring an outsider to do this permits them justification, which she deems the primary reason for seeking his assistance. When the protagonist asks for an explanation, she urges that if they put their forces out there, they would come across all kinds of problems and restrictions. However, if they use Mage Van to take care of the obstacles indirectly, the rival companies won't be able to complain, at least not officially. Lennox contemplates that the 40s districts are basically in anarchy and wonders if the large businesses begin getting their hands on those districts, the order will collapse. That's not something the people of the city government would want. He grins, realizing they want him to use as a proxy to get rid of their rivals in the 40s districts, and asks Manhwa what they will give him in return. Manhwa remarks that she is aware of his request for something rare, so she presents Annarasumanara's 5 fingers, which the Central Council put in a VIP auction. She emphasizes that it's a single-use artifact that's not on the market, and reveals that there are 5 evasion flight magic spells on the item, which the Melody school did, as it's not something he can buy with money. Manhwa hands him the contact paper and proposes a deal. If Lennox fulfills 5 of their requests, she promises to give him this artifact. Additionally, they will provide extra compensation for each completed task based on his value on the deep web. Meanwhile, Lennox reflects on the situation, recognizing his limited mobility and acknowledging that the artifact would compensate for this weakness. Therefore, he requests some time to consider the offer before making a decision. Later, the protagonist discusses the deal with Jenny, who considers it a big deal with equally significant risks and benefits. She acknowledges having some knowledge about the value of Annarasumanara's 5 fingers and speculates that if that's the reward, then the associated risks are likely considerable. Jenny concludes that Dyke's underlying aim is to undermine their competitors and seize control of the profits, warning Lennox that he'll inevitably make enemies if he agrees to this deal. The protagonist concurs with Jenny's assessment, reflecting that his previous requests usually involve straightforward objectives or minimal repercussions. However, this particular task stands apart. The potential for retaliation from the weapons companies in the 40s district is considerable. Despite the risks, he realizes that achieving his desires cannot solely prioritize safety. He acknowledges that rare medicines and precious relics, beyond monetary purchase, represent a higher ascent he must pursue. Understanding that he must ascend further in his pursuits, he instructs Jenny to inform them that he will accept the request. The next day, Jenny briefs that the first target Dyke chose is Paul Ackerman, who is based in the 48th district, and he has also invested a lot in illegal weapons. Paul started 2 years ago and quickly obtained a commerce route, and as the business boomed, they planned to cut off the investor first. Jenny emphasizes there were a lot of people talking because no one knew where Paul was getting his money from. However, there are rumors that he's the hands and feet of the Jew's master. She then explains about the leader of the giant cartel, Dominic Cabarro, who has become famous on Pandemonium recently. She considers it likely because of that. But even Paul Ackerman's bodyguard, Jude Russell, is powerful, used to be a war mercenary, and is pretty well known amongst mercenaries. Jenny reiterates that Paul is Lennox's primary target, but Dyke has said there will also be an extra reward if he kills Jude Russell. She reveals that according to intel, Paul Ackerman will hold a meeting with his distributors near the port in the 48th district. When the protagonist ponders if it is trustworthy information, Jenny reassures that she has double-checked, revealing that she has heard that there are restrictions set on who can enter the port area. Lennox then asks about the other people on the request, to which she informs him that there will be 5 people on this side. She assumes they chose people similar to the protagonist in value, and tells him that they are all scheduled to assemble in 3 days. Wrapping up her briefing, Jenny took a deep breath and informed him that was all the information Dyke had provided her. Lennox then gets up to leave, telling her that he has to start preparing since the mission is in 3 days. He thanks her for everything she has done for him. In response, Jenny smiles gently, hoping to see him again. 3 days later, the Dyke's appointed team, consisting of 5 members, including the protagonist, gathered around the port to target Paul Ackerman. One of the individuals, donning a steel mask, expresses certainty that they all heard the gist of the plan and asserts that she will tell them the details quickly and start their mission. The masked person explains that Paul Ackerman's soldiers have locked down the harbor and mentions there are precisely 5 entrances, coincidentally aligning with the number of members in their team. Each person will take an entry and bring down the soldiers before them, and then they will stand by the storage containers. The masked guy asserts that once the meeting place for Paul Ackerman and his distributors is decided, some will proceed with a plan first and the rest will join in. The masked guy then distributes communication devices, cautioning that the targets and their subordinates will disperse after tonight, so they must not hesitate to act swiftly. The masked lady asks why they didn't even think of covering their faces for this mission, asserting that Dyke may have much money but won't ensure their safety. The short-haired girl sarcastically asks if both the steel-masked individuals don't work in this field. She emphasizes that they need to reveal their face and name in this field, whether they like it or not, to increase their value. The masked individuals walk away, urging her not to get in their way. As they depart, the big guy of the team asks the short-haired girl which way she will go, to which she sternly responds that it's none of his business and emphasizes that she will take care of his job alone. That guy then turns his focus to the protagonist, remarking that he doesn't seem to be the physical combat type, commanding him to follow them to the harbor. He sternly urges that if the protagonist makes it hard for them by being slow, he will rip out his appendages. Lennox doesn't respond and turns around, contemplating that he is tired of threats like this, considering it won't be too late to show that guy who is more robust. Later, with a count of 3, they all get into action through a different entrance and knock down Paul's guards as much as possible through their preferred means. Lennox refrains from physically engaging the soldiers instead of unleashing his magic against them. He reasons that since they are merely soldiers, they would likely be vulnerable to illusion magic, leaving them susceptible to his magical manipulation. When he notices that Paul Ackerman isn't here yet, he decides to lessen the number of soldier heads before Paul arrives. Employing his illusion spell, Lennox manipulates the soldiers' perceptions, creating auditory illusions and visual distortions, directing them toward a specific location. Using his mana-infused bullets, he overwhelms and incapacitates the disoriented soldiers. Moving on, Lennox continues to employ similar tactics against others present. Lennox continued to move around the area while the other team member issued instructions over the communication device, emphasizing that anyone who spotted the target should report it immediately. Lennox considers that since he is here, he will begin. As he navigates among the cargo, he retrieves the charm acquired from Milla. While holding the charm, he reflects that using it would consume one of its limited uses. However, acknowledging Jude Russell's past as a warfare mercenary, Lennox speculates that Russell probably possesses exceptionally sharp senses, prompting him to prepare for potential encounters by considering the charm's use. He uses this to stay hidden from that warfare mercenary, and while hiding behind a cargo, he notices some guys there, wondering if they are the distributors. Soon, a car halts near the distributors, and Paul Ackerman and Russell come out of it, while Lennox immediately reports that Paul is in his area in Area F3. Paul greets his distributors with a broad smile, noting the perfect weather for discussing business, although the men around him appear visibly apprehensive. He places a hand on one of the men's shoulders, expressing gratitude for facilitating the meeting, emphasizing the importance of their discussion and the difficulty he faced in arranging this opportunity. As the fearful man anxiously asks what Paul means, as he doesn't understand his implications, Paul's tone shifts. He reveals his frustration, highlighting his extensive investments in money, gifts, and efforts to maintain favorable relationships with public servants to ensure smooth operations. Disappointed by the lack of reciprocation, Paul's frustration escalates, leading him to forcefully tighten his grip on the distributor's shoulder in a rage. As the man attempts to apologize, Paul reacts harshly by striking him and pushing him aside, subjecting him to a physical thrashing. He expresses his frustration, angrily berating the man for what he perceives as wasting his time and resources. The violent outburst sends shivers down the spines of the remaining distributors, instilling fear and apprehension among them. While observing the escalating situation, Lennox realizes he is called for his teammates, but cannot stand idly by. Swiftly, he retrieves his gun, intending to initiate the first strike. Employing tactical maneuvers such as aim assist, along with cover-up techniques like spin-up acceleration and trajectory cover-up, he incorporates silence magic to conceal the sound of the shot. Lennox aims at Paul, intending to fire without alerting others and directing the aim towards him. However, before the bullet reaches its intended target, Paul's vigilant bodyguard reacts swiftly, using his sword to deflect it, averting the danger. The sudden turn of events sparks tension and panic among the distributors. Meanwhile, as the head of the distributors rushes to save himself, Russell persuades him and assassinates him for being a coward. In the heat of the moment, Paul ferociously commands the rest of them to take action against the intruder. Suddenly, everyone's attention is diverted to a surge of light, which catches Paul and his distributors off guard. Lennox realizes it is a laser attack that the steel-masked lady employed at the target. The lady standing atop a cargo remarked that getting rid of all the garbage at once was lucky and wondered if that concluded the mission. The short-haired girl approaches that lady, queries if she's making assumptions without even checking the corpses, and informs her that the attack didn't affect Jude Russell. The masked lady suggests moving on, reminding the group that their initial plan was to eliminate Paul Ackerman and then depart. This prompts the short-haired girl to question whether the decision is being made unilaterally by the masked lady. Meanwhile, Lennox, eavesdropping on their heated argument amidst the precarious situation, realizes the need to prepare for an additional attack, regardless of their dispute. Conversely, the short-haired girl anxiously warns the masked lady that if she continues to act like this, she will complain to Dyke, as she must not think she is the only one getting special treatment for this case. Out of the blue, Russell intervenes by stabbing the short-haired girl, which catches them off guard and urges that ladies shouldn't be chatting so loudly this late, emphasizing that his client doesn't like it. Curious about Russell's infiltration, the masked lady wonders how he got through her detection radar. Russell, casually wiping the blood from his sword with his tongue, mocks the masked lady's lackluster skills, highlighting that she failed to notice his presence until he attacked the girl. Sampling the taste of the blood, he comments on its irritating flavor, but admits that for his first kill of the night, it's not too bad. Hiding behind the cargo, Lennox notices the sudden turn of events and contemplates Russell's demeanor, particularly noting his blood tasting. He speculates that Russell might be of the same kind as that retired scavenger soldier based on his actions and behavior. As that lady attempts to attack, Russell remains unfazed. He casually remarks that she has an accurate modern arm there and sarcastically asks if she is a part of the Sybrid Echo. The protagonist is taken aback to hear Russell's claim about Sybrid Echo, as it's a term that refers to types or organizations that push the limits of humankind by combining the human body and magic engineering. Lennox reflects on his past knowledge that they are not easy to encounter in real life, but now he guesses that wasn't true. On the other hand, Russell expresses disappointment, commenting that blood mixed with oil is messy, and firmly states that the masked lady is destined to die. Undeterred, the masked lady upholds her composure and readies herself to confront Russell. She remarks that she doesn't think Russell is really backed into a corner here, emphasizing that Paul Ackerman is already dead, and this will all be over as soon as he dies. Russell sarcastically remarks that he doesn't think about that and tilts his head toward Paul Ackerman, standing down inside his magical shield, unruffled by her prior laser attack. Paul asks if she thinks he wouldn't have known about the unwelcome guests coming today, catching the masked lady off guard. He adds that he even invited another guest, and with a snap of his fingers, he calls out the big guy who has deceived Dyke's group and comes up with a Sybrid Echo's head in his hand. This revelation unsettles the masked lady, as the big guy had initially pretended to be affiliated with Dyke's group at the beginning, causing a chill down her spine. Paul adds that she didn't think he could pay off the ones on her side and get them to act as traitors. He refers to them as idiots, asserting that Dyke should have known that nothing is impossible with money. Paul mocks her, stating that the Dyke's mercenaries are so worse with their work, considering it's hilarious, and brandishes his gun at her. Paul reveals that he will open that mechanical head of her and get all the information out before getting to her client. However, before he can take any action, Lennox intervenes and shoots Paul's head with his long-range barrel gun, rendering him dead. The unexpected presence of the protagonist enrages the big guy, who abruptly lunges to assault him. Meanwhile, as Russell attempts to kill that lady, Lennox realizes that Russell is planning to kill the woman first, so he plans to get rid of that big guy first. The guy abruptly leaps, yelling if he is hiding all this time, and refers to Lennox as a little rat, urging he must not be thinking about running away. Meanwhile, the protagonist acknowledges that it is impossible to run away as soon as he reveals himself, so he prepares to defend himself by using a magic shield to block the impending attack as much as possible. The guy forcibly hits the shield and easily shatters most of the layers of Lennox's shield, which bewilders him. Lennox realizes 4 of his shields have been broken, acknowledging the formidable strength behind the guy's punch, comparable to a heavy weapon's. Recognizing the danger, Lennox swiftly aims his gun at the assailant, deeming it a more effective solution in this challenging situation. He unleashes his aim assistance and shock reinforcement maneuver, sending the assailant tumbling aside, wondering if it works. However, to his surprise, the assailant remains unfazed and comes back with a malicious grin and stern demeanor. He forcefully lunges at the protagonist, asking if he thinks that a child's toy like that works on him, which catches Lennox off guard. The imposing figure radiates an overwhelming aura, boldly declaring his intent to obliterate Lennox with that toy. Amid this, Lennox becomes acutely aware of the impending peril, realizing that if this assailant manages to breach the magic shield, his situation will become dire. The protagonist swiftly employs shock magic to evade that attack. However, the powerful shock wave tumbles him off balance. The assailant sarcastically remarks that he thought Lennox was an idiot, but it looks like he has courage, and adds that his ancestors love courage like that. In this precarious situation, Lennox uses the Viper to regain his strength, and soon he discerns that the assailant's ancestor is helping him through necromancy. He realizes that the assailant is already formidable on his own, but with the additional boost from necromancy, he becomes even more powerful. While inhaling the Viper, the protagonist assumes that if Jude Russell joined that big guy, it would be disadvantageous for him. He creates another magical shield, contemplating that he needs to figure out what happened with the masked woman and Jude Russell first. Conversely, the big guy reveals that honestly, he would spare the protagonist's life as Lennox's actions inadvertently made his work much more accessible by sending Paul Ackerman's head flying. He mentions being already well compensated by both parties involved and believes that Lennox's actions have resolved the situation, eliminating the need for him to stir up more trouble with Dyke. It prompts the protagonist to ponder whether the assailant's implication suggests that things will be fine if there are no witnesses. The guy bursts into laughter and sternly concurs with Lennox's assertion. Lennox realizes that the guy's true intentions are to get rid of all the witnesses and affiliate with Dyke again. Suddenly, his attention is diverted to Russell, and he is taken aback to see that the masked lady has managed to run away. He becomes bewildered that Jude Russell is coming this way to confront him. He considers that to fight both of them, he has no choice but to use that method and abruptly starts hushing. The assailant bare-handedly hoists the cargo, asserting where the protagonist thinks he is going and refers to him as a bastard. Subsequently, he forcefully launches the colossal object toward him, but despite the immense threat, Lennox somehow manages to evade the incoming assault deftly. As the assailant persistently hurls cargo to impede Lennox's escape, Lennox finds it increasingly challenging to fend off the relentless attacks and realizes that he can't run far. With a cargo container hurtling dangerously towards him, he swiftly deploys a magic bind, catching and diverting the cargo just in time. He runs swiftly and stops near an ocean, while the assailant finds it funny and sarcastically remarks that he must be confident in his swimming skills, but it is not that easy to swim in an ocean at night. With the Viper still in his mouth, the protagonist inquires about the assailant's insinuation, to which the guy asks if his frantic rush to the ocean's edge implies an intent to escape via the sea, questioning the reason for his high-speed arrival at that location. Lennox turns around and asks whether the assailant believes anyone could survive in such weather conditions in the ocean. The big guy responds sarcastically, suggesting that Lennox, with a supposedly fragile body, wouldn't endure in such an environment. He tauntingly inquires if Lennox chose this place to meet his end melodramatically. Suddenly, Russell arrives and impressively cuts the cargo with his sword, catching their attention. Upon his arrival, the big guy mockingly asks if he chased that masked girl all the way here just to fail to kill her, and that's why he can't even protect his own client. Russell swiftly retorts, his voice firm, instructing the man to hold his tongue. He explains that Sybrid Echo was trying to set up a biotransmission to aid her escape, leaving him in a challenging predicament. They then redirect their focus toward the protagonist. Russell asserts that it looks like Lennox tried to run but failed, yet he looks relatively calm and asks if he has already accepted his death. Lennox claims that there is one thing he wants to know and ponders that they have no reason to kill him, as he assumes Russell's job is already over since his client is dead. Russell responds with a smirk, deeming Lennox's question irrelevant at this moment before his imminent demise. He adds that even though his client is no longer alive, he still seeks revenge as Jew's master assigned him the task. While Jew's master might not directly punish him for losing one subordinate, he wouldn't simply let it slide. At that moment, Lennox comprehends the truth of Paul Ackerman's association with Jew's master. He muses that if Jew's master recruited both Russell and that guy to safeguard his close subordinate, Paul Ackerman, their prowess must be considerable. Sensing the urgency to neutralize the situation to prevent any additional chaos, the protagonist takes a brief moment. When he opens his eyes, now with a purple hue, he stealthily activates reverse gravity, catching them off guard. The reverse gravity maneuver hoists Russell and the assailant slightly, throwing off their balance and causing them to remain stuck in the same position. Russell reacts swiftly by pressing his sword against the ground for stability, while the assailant attempts to regain balance using his fists. Lennox grins, acknowledging that he wouldn't have readied his next move if he believed they were weak enough for this to work. Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind sweeps everything aside, but both opponents remain fixed due to Lennox's maneuver. A chilling sensation runs down their spines, and Russell, sensing the nearby hurling cargo and the direction of the wind, suddenly realizes the imminent threat. Simultaneously, with sarcasm, Lennox acknowledges Russell's quick perception. The protagonist conjures a colossal wave of seawater, prompting them to grasp the urgency of escaping its reach. However, Lennox is determined not to let them flee. With swift precision, he seizes control of their mana, leaving them bewildered and unable to manipulate their mana energies. Lennox reflects that he had multiple opportunities to kill that guy on his way here. However, the reason he deliberately held off until he came here was for this precise moment. Suddenly, that enormous wave splatters all around, forceful enough to hurl everything, catching them off guard. However, due to the protagonist manipulating their mana, they cannot take protective measures or defend against the impact. Meanwhile, Lennox strategically erects a magical shield for self-protection and calmly assesses that he needs to aim for the perfect timing to defeat two people as skilled as them at the same time before the wave goes out completely. He swiftly unleashes the ice round maneuver, which freezes the water around them and creates sharp ice bristles around them. Simultaneously, the protagonist readies his firearm, leveraging the aim assistant and outburst reinforcement to take a precise shot at the assailant's head. Despite being shot, the guy tremblingly remarks that just because he could not move for that short period of time, he ponders how he managed to hit him. Even after half his head is blown away, the protagonist notices him talking, so he considers that guy a monster. He contemplates that he must not create any possibility for further trouble and completely bursts that guy's head off. Lennox acknowledges that even if it's him, he will not handle the kind of power that's been reinforced through the spirit of an ancestor. Suddenly, something unexpected happens as Russell shatters the ice around him and swiftly vanishes from Lennox's sight. Unexpectedly, from nowhere, Russell suddenly leaps from Lennox's blind spot, aiming to ambush the protagonist. However, Lennox, anticipating the move, had already fortified himself with a protective magic shield. However, to his surprise, Lennox's magic shield deflects his attempt. Bewildered and taken aback, Russell couldn't help but express his astonishment, questioning how he managed to counter his attack with such ease. The protagonist acknowledges the tactical wisdom behind launching a physical assault immediately after a mage casts the spell. However, he had already prepared, leaving a few slight gaps between his shields so that he could change the direction of the shield's rotation when an attack was coming. He acknowledges the need for precise mana control and its necessity for such maneuvers. However, he downplays the difficulty, implying it's a manageable feat with proper focus and skill. Yet, he cryptically asserts that the following attack will present a more significant challenge despite this preparation. Suddenly, Russell adopts a swift and evasive movement pattern around the protagonist, rendering his intentions challenging to predict. After his initial attack failed, Lennox quickly recognized that Russell's change in tactics signifies an intent to avoid direct confrontation. Remaining vigilant, Lennox keenly observes Russell's agile maneuvers, hopping and darting between cargo containers. With a knowing grin, Lennox anticipates Russell's accelerated approach to an attack. Swiftly and decisively, just as Russell closes the distance, Lennox executes a maneuver that forcefully knocks him down onto the icy ground, causing Russell to bleed profusely. In that crucial moment, Lennox swiftly employs a gravity bind, ensnaring Russell's body from various angles, rendering him immobile. Dark tendrils of mana coil around Russell's neck, constricting and intensifying his incapacitation. In his distress, Russell wonders aloud how Lennox can precisely anticipate and counter his movements. The protagonist calmly discloses that he was aware of Russell's presence from the very outset, affirming that it was impossible for him not to detect his mana. He further explains that he had extended his own mana in the vicinity where Russell was positioned, prompting the adversary to wonder what he meant. Lennox swiftly executes the Shadow Raid maneuver, seizing Russell's legs and detaching them from lower limbs while the guy shouts out loud in excruciating pain. The protagonist reminds Russell that he licked blood in front of him, yet he wants him to be deceived. In a desperate bid to escape, Russell unexpectedly transfigures into a mist of blood, suspending himself in the air. Unperturbed by this sudden transformation, the protagonist calmly remarks that he has already discerned Russell's true nature as a vampire. Reflecting on Russell's distinct traits, such as his robust physique, arrogant strategic intellect in battle, an inherent thirst for blood, and the ability to manipulate a shroud of blood fog, Lennox affirms his certainty about Russell's vampire identity. Lennox acknowledges that it's a beneficial skill, but it makes him very weak to attack, and considering that he took on that form during an escape means that this is Russell's final struggle. Anticipating this crucial moment, Lennox executes the Thunder Calling maneuver, a strategic move that obliterates and destabilizes Russell's blood fog. The protagonist sighs, acknowledging that he overworked his body, and inhales his viper, realizing it wasn't easy. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to him, a round flying robot-like device approaches him. Later, at Dyke's office, Killian sees the exclusive video of Lennox's last encounters video on his iPad and expresses his certainty that he has foreseen this outcome. He tells Manhwa that this is why he already told her things would get annoying if she picked someone solely based on performance. In response, Manhwa acknowledges this prediction and remarks it's something she had expected to happen, prompting Killian to ask if she anticipated a traitor in the group. He stresses his belief that they should have assessed the candidates, asserting the necessity of establishing a method to select the correct individuals if they admit people whose identities are uncertain. Manhwa questions whether implementing a selection test would have resulted in assembling a team as proficient as the previous one. She also emphasizes the probable necessity of offering higher remuneration for their efforts and wonders how Killian can propose such an idea given their current predicament. Killian asserts that this very issue might have influenced their current situation. Manhwa sighs deeply, acknowledging their estimation of the 40th District's capabilities fell short. She thought it would be okay if they brought together guys who hadn't caused any trouble, and she never expected them to turn their back on them so quickly. In response, Killian reminds her that she is working with criminals without records, so she needs to take a bit of a risk. He then presents Lennox's picture via holography, highlighting his exceptional skills and underlining the necessity of retaining him for the success of their plan. Manhwa discloses her decision to allocate a portion of the promised reward meant for the other four to Lennox, hoping it would satisfy the protagonist's needs and ensure his cooperation. She informs him that she also asked Manhwa to look for more freelancers, and that it's probably a good idea to test freelancers beforehand, like Killian said, even if it takes more money. He shouldn't have tried to save money on this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, in that exclusive video, Lennox's body seems to be bleeding profusely, and the footage ends there. The next day, standing in his bathroom, Lennox applies an ointment of Amnak on his injury, considering that the reaction is pretty dramatic. Meanwhile, on the call, Jenny relayed information that it looks like Paul Ackerman was investing in quite a few places for the guys he was investing into, as they got their financial lifeline cut overnight. She considers it a big deal that Lennox has killed Juice's master's subordinate. When the protagonist asks if Dyke said anything else, Jenny reveals they have sent a long message apologizing to him, as they are probably anxious about this whole thing. According to Jenny, they requested him to revisit the headquarters. Lennox then ponders whether he should visit them. In response, Jenny suggests ignoring them and expresses her uncertainty, stating that she doesn't know what Dyke is thinking when stepping into this field. According to her, it's strange for them to want him to continue working with them after forming such a poorly planned endeavor. She proposes that it's not too late for Lennox to respond, especially after seeing what additional rewards they might offer, assuming it could be quite a sum of money. Lennox hopes her assumption is accurate, to which Jenny comments on the difficulty of the recent job. She suggests that if he's injured anywhere, he could seek assistance from Jordan, the bartender who previously worked as a medic. The protagonist is surprised and questions if Jordan is a doctor. Jenny clarified that Jordan didn't possess a license, but he likely had some skill if he was confident enough to disclose that information to her. Lennox acknowledges this and will inquire about it the next time they meet. After the call with Jenny, Lennox ignored all the calls from Dyke and just focused on recovering. Thanks to his rash efforts at escaping, his condition was so bad that it was even hard to eat. Later, after getting a bit better, he focused on magic research during breaks and has improved his magic through meditation until now. He experimented with the magic-bound maneuver during his meditation, but changed it and tried analyzing the spell patterns. The protagonist decided he would collect data to create spells in case he didn't have an inherent magic system that would satisfy him in the future. Lennox gazes at the scattered pages with different mana patterns, like 3 big bursts of mana, 7 spins, and 2 compressions, wondering whether he should draw the mana patterns. A few days later, he visited a supermarket, acknowledging that he couldn't give up on a diet even if he were busy. He considers it more admirable if he could go to a market closer to home, but he can't go to that place because of the city government agent Evelyn. As he browses the vegetables, he's taken aback to find Evelyn casually eating an apple, remarking it's been a while. Lennox can't believe it, wondering how unlucky he can be and if she has moved her shop. He recalls his last encounter with Evelyn, in which she asked what a mage like him was doing there in a place like this. Lennox abruptly realizes the urgency to change his mana first. Although he isn't sure if she memorized his mana pattern, there is nothing terrible about being careful. He greets her with a casual, long time no see, discreetly tweaking his mana pattern. However, it seems Evelyn astutely senses it and thinks his mana pattern has changed slightly. Nonetheless, Evelyn dismisses her assertion, stating that she must have imagined it, and the protagonist remarks probably. Deep down, he contemplates how sharp Evelyn's eye must be to catch the subtle shift in his mana pattern within that short span. He recalled Evelyn's daring encounter with Kroken. He acknowledged her impressive skill set and recognized the need for greater caution in his interactions with her. After handing her 10,000 sel, he wishes her well with her sales, and as he turns around, Evelyn halts him. She asks him about his name, prompting the protagonist to ponder why she wants to know that. Evelyn reasons that because his mana pattern is elegant for someone who's a level 4 mage, and someone like him could make their way up the social ladder quickly. She then smiles, stating that they might meet another time, so it would be nice to know each other's names just in case. Lennox wearily wonders if that means she wants to see him again later as a colleague or as an agent's prey. Evelyn acknowledges that she is not supposed to tell him this information, but reveals that there will be a large-scale inspection of the lawless areas in the outer districts soon, and the plan is mainly targeted at the people who are avoiding taxes in the 40th district. She casually suggests that if he is involved with them, he better disappear for a while, as it won't matter if his name is on the deep web. She assumes that the protagonist doesn't do that kind of work and ponders, does he, while Lennox maintains his calm demeanor and asks what's a deep web. She smiles, remarking that she is just telling him because she likes him, and it would be awkward if they saw each other again in that kind of situation. The protagonist contemplates the possibility that it wouldn't end up being awkward if he got caught in such an inspection. She then introduces herself as Evelyn Marcia, and Lennox introduces himself as Ed James. Evelyn then suspiciously asserts that he better be prepared if they meet again, and he can't give her the same name. Later, as the protagonist departs the market, he wonders if he should find another market again to prevent another encounter with Evelyn. On his way, he receives a call from Jenny, who updates him on Dyke's urgent attempts to contact him. She mentions that Dyke has called her, and as she expected, they are desperate because they can't reach him. Jenny further reveals that they doubled the promised reward multiple times and are also thinking about what else they could give him. According to her, they have urged Lennox to visit their headquarters the following week. As the protagonist is surprised that it's longer than he expected, Jenny counters that they must decide on the least that they are willing to Dyke's request, and suggests he should come over when he has time. Lennox agrees with her perspective and informs Jenny that he'll head over immediately. The protagonist takes on his Van's persona and arrives at the bar to meet Jenny. He senses the environment is a little different than usual and weirdly quiet, and wonders if everyone is wary of that man while all the customers gaze at him thoroughly. That suspicious man sitting near the bar table turns around his head on Lennox's arrival, states that he is finally here as he was waiting for him, and asks if the protagonist knows who he is. When Lennox denies it, that man asserts that he better remember him from now on. The man emanates a malevolent aura and claims he suffered significant losses due to Lennox's actions. As he releases a vicious surge of mana, aiming it at Lennox, the protagonist remains composed. With adept skill, Lennox quickly erects a protective magic shield, deflecting the man's aggressive attack. Inquisitive, Lennox questions whether the man collaborated with Paul Ackerman, to which the man reveals that Paul used to invest in his business. The protagonist sarcastically deduces that the man might deal in arms and question if he seeks revenge. Rising from his seat, the man looms tall and authoritative, implying that today isn't the day for such actions. He clarifies that he's there to issue a warning. Addressing Lennox as a kid, he sternly cautions that their group doesn't show mercy to adversaries, regardless of age. He emphasizes that considering Lennox's actions as a mistake is a one-time exception, which he won't extend again. The man's fist slams onto the bar table, expressing his anger as he warns Lennox that if he dares to interfere with their business again, he should be ready for the consequences. Meanwhile, Lennox remains unfazed and continues to evade Beck's malicious attempts to attack him. The protagonist realizes that the man is trying to intimidate him, but he stands firm, refusing to make it easy for him. He counteracts the man's mana attack with one of his own, but the man appears unaffected, leaving Lennox hopeful that he won't misinterpret his actions. Lennox warns that if the man continues to resolve issues in a chaotic manner, his client won't simply stand by and watch it unfold. He further inquires Beck whether he believed the absence of bodies was because of Paul Ackerman's stupidity that no bodies were left behind. The man pauses for a while, then remarks, "Let's pretend this never happened," and turns his attention to Jenny. She, too, keeps in mind that the only reason he leaves her bar alone is because of Kaiser. When Beck asserts that if she tries to defend this guy, but before he can complete, Jenny intervenes firmly, urging that's enough babbling, he must get out of here. Her stern tone left that man Beck speechless. He gazed at Lennox and left the bar. The protagonist takes a deep sigh and asks who that person is. Jenny informs him that Beck Clinton was a higher-up from Cigar Bang. She explains that Cigar Bang is a gang that has been most active in the 48th district as of late. Lennox assumes that Guy Beck is pissed since Paul Ackerman died in his territory, and Jenny agrees with his assertion. However, she warns him that they won't be easy to deal with if he gets into trouble with them, and explains that they have almost 1,000 gang members and are among the wealthiest gangs. She suggests that if Lennox wants to handle them, it might be better to collaborate with Dyke to eliminate the threat. Meanwhile, the protagonist wonders how much work it would be to eliminate a whole gang and how much assistance Dyke's support would truly provide. He assumes that it would be best to prepare for the worst-case scenario. Jenny informs him that she has put together about 5 requests that wanted him specifically and presents him with her laptop, urging him to have a look at this real quick. Lennox contemplates that he doesn't think she would do this for no reason and notices the request from Sebastian, who works in a similar line of work as Jenny. The protagonist is intrigued and inquires whether this method is typical for brokers in their line of business. Jenny admits she doesn't have a clear answer, pointing out that the significant advance deposit of $22 million suggests Sebastian is genuinely interested in offering work to Lennox. She believes Sebastian's intentions are genuine and views this opportunity as beneficial, noting that Sebastian's clients are highly skilled in their respective fields. Meanwhile, the protagonist considers it would be impressive if he could hear about Dyke's internal situation through Sebastian. Lennox inquires if Jenny has any objections to him taking on this task alongside Sebastian. Jenny replies with an indifferent tone, mentioning that it's inconsequential to her, assuming that if Lennox had a preference for working with Sebastian, he would have already made that decision. She then asserts confidently that her name holds a prominent position on the deep web as Van's primary broker. The next day, Lennox arrives at the 45th district and stands before Sebastian's office. He thoughts about the common perception that districts in the 40s outclass those in the 50s linger in his mind, but the reality before him defies those notions. The distinct architectural flair of Sebastian's office catches Lennox's attention, prompting contemplation on whether such a building style would typically belong in districts with lower numerical rankings, perhaps more akin to the 10s. As he observes the building, Sebastian emerges to greet Lennox and asks whether this encounter marks their initial meeting since their previous interaction at the bar. Sebastian escorts Lennox into his building to delve into the mission at hand. Leading him into an office room, Lennox finds another individual already present. Sebastian introduces the newcomer as Madison, indicating that Madison is here for personal matters. Sebastian introduces Lennox as Mage Van, praising his remarkable freelancing abilities. Observing Madison, Lennox notes that he appears like an average office worker and spots some injuries on Madison's face, raising his curiosity. Madison informs the protagonist that he is the team manager overseeing the development branch of an automobile company called Audible. He explains that his current responsibility involves managing a critical project for a new car model that will decide the fate of the company. However, recently, while he was transporting the blueprint of the model, an unidentified group of freelancers stole it. Madison expresses his urgency and desire to retrieve the blueprint in one piece if possible. However, if retrieval isn't possible, he requests Lennox to ensure the complete destruction of the blueprint to prevent its misuse or replication by unauthorized individuals. Sebastian reassures Madison about Van's competence, affirming that Van is an adept individual with a flawless track record. Despite Sebastian's confidence in Lennox's abilities, Lennox finds Sebastian's certainty quite unwarranted, considering he hasn't previously collaborated with him. On the other hand, Madison feels relieved by Sebastian's assurance, finds his confidence reassuring, and expresses his anticipation of working alongside Mage Van. As he departs from the office, Sebastian ponders what the protagonist thinks of it, to which Lennox responds that he doesn't know what Sebastian means. While sipping the tea, Lennox further adds that what else can he know other than the fact that Madison was being dishonest. Sebastian remarks that if Lennox already knows that, then he won't need to make this long. The protagonist elaborates, mentioning that Madison's supposed injuries, a mere bruise on the lip and a few cuts, seem inconsistent with someone who just had a fight with robbers and, based on these observations, concludes that Madison is a poor liar. Sebastian states that there are two possibilities. Either Madison is working with the robbers and lied to them, or there is another possibility. However, before he can reveal the second possibility, Lennox remarks that if Madison tried to betray his company and got betrayed instead. Acknowledging Lennox's observation, Sebastian agrees, asserting that it's a shame for Madison, and informs the protagonist that he himself has a pretty good relationship with Audible's CEO. He reveals that he is going to send the conversation they had straight to the CEO's email. Sebastian believes that as a consequence, Madison might face arrest the following day instead of going to work. Meanwhile, the protagonist contemplates that Sebastian seems all happy-go-lucky on the outside, but he is actually pretty brutal. Lennox emphasizes that in Audible's case, they really need not Madison's confession but the robber's location. Sebastian concurs, stating that's where the protagonist's skills come in, and commends that Van is great at catching wanted criminals. With a grin ponders if Mage Van will accept the request.